Welcome to Come to Your Senses, the School of Sensual Living podcast. I'm your host, Mary Lofgren. Here, we explore how to live bravely and beautifully through pleasure, mindfulness, embodiment, femininity, beauty, art, and of course, everyday sensuality. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. So today's episode is a first installment in a series I'm calling Tending Your Resplendent Feminine Nervous System. The topic of the nervous system is something I could definitely do a 10-part or 20-part series on because it's a very vast topic. But after a decade of exploring growth, advancement, therapy, self-help, in the last 3 or 4 years, I've really honed my own personal work into the work of embodiment and nervous system attunement. I have learned so much, and I have seen such dramatic changes that I couldn't resist sharing some of this empowering information with you today. Additionally, I have also enrolled in an embodiment-based coach training program, and I've recently opened up a small incubator-style program where my regular coaching package of 8 sessions with monthly rituals with the group and a small non-Facebook community online to track your breakthroughs are all part of the program, and it is being currently offered at a very reduced rate while I am expanding my skill set. And I wanted to just start by sharing that with you and saying that if you're interested in learning more about what we talk about on this episode today, head over to schoolofsensualliving.com/coaching. And I would love to schedule a 20-minute session with you to talk about your dreams and your goals and your desires and your relationship to your body, to your nervous system, and to your sensuality, and how we can marry those two systems of wisdom together. So schoolofsensualliving.com/coaching. The last day to enroll is October 30th, unless we sell out before. And in today's episode, you're going to be getting a little sample of what you'll experience in this embodied intelligence coaching program. And so I'd love to begin today with a very famous quote from Einstein. One cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. So if you're a person who has a goal or a dream or a desire, and that could be a grand goal like writing a book or starting a family or buying a home or increasing your earnings or writing a Nobel Prize winning essay or something really kind of what feels massive to you. Or if you have what some might perceive as a smaller goal, like slowing your life down, working less, participating in your life more, having those things people call hobbies, knowing what you like, being more sensually attuned to yourself, taking exquisite care of your health and your body. These are all, again, seemingly small goals in comparison, and yet these are what some might call more feminine goals because they are about creating healthy, rich, nutritive soil in your body and in your life so that your bigger dreams can take root and grow. No matter what kind of dream or desire it is, we're all familiar with the experience of having a dream or desire and maybe gaining a little bit of momentum, but then reaching a block, reaching a wall, reaching a barrier. Or maybe it doesn't feel like a block or a wall or a barrier. Maybe it feels like just a sudden drop in that momentum that leads to abandonment and self-sabotage. What I would like to propose is that the problem here is not your capability. It's not your level of knowledge. Often we know exactly what we need to do to move further down the path of our dreams. It is not your talent. It is not your skill. It is that when a goal is birthed from the mind, and the intelligence of the mind is the only intelligence employed to achieve it, you are using one system of intelligence to create your dream. When the truth is, there are multiple systems of intelligence below the wisdom of your intellect that exists in the wise, rich landscape of your body and of your nervous system. So rather than speaking in the language of thought and words and cognition and logic and rationale, like your mind does, your body speaks fluently in the language of sensation. And the reason that we do anything is because it is spurred by sensation. So for example, let's say it's 3:00 in the afternoon, you've been sitting at the computer on Zoom meetings all day, you feel burnt out, you feel a sensation of discomfort in your chest or in your belly or in your back. And that sensation drives a behavior. Sometimes that's going to mean going to the fridge to try to find a snack to help distract your body from that sensation of discomfort with a different sensation. Sometimes it's going to mean stretching your neck to help relieve that sensation of discomfort. But regardless, sensation spurs thought, and thought spurs behavior. So when it comes to meeting yourself and meeting your potential when setting goals and dreams and desires, our goals and dreams and desires fall into the category of goal, dream, and desires because they require us to reach beyond what we know we are capable of achieving. And there is lots of positive feeling when we get to the other side of that reaching. But there is a lot of discomfort in the valley between those two peaks. And so what can happen is that with the best of intentions to wake up and write, let's say you want to write a book, with the best of intentions to wake up and write, when growth and change and evolution is associated with the sensation of danger or fear of leaving people behind if you grow and change, or is aware of the sensation of risk associated with the visibility of doing something like publishing a book, that sensation will send messages to your mind, altering your behavior away from your goal. Because for better or worse, our body and our mind is always scanning, always roving for how to maintain an experience of safety. And this is why embodiment-based coaching, like I described at the start of this episode, is so vastly different than any kind of training I've ever done. Because rather than simply addressing the mind, again, which is that consciousness that creates the problem, we're going a little bit deeper into the landscape of the body where these sensations exist that then influence the thoughts and the behavior. And so the word resplendent means a quality of almost unbelievably majestic beauty. Could you love a definition more? I mean, whoever invented the word resplendence, I would really love to take them out to dinner. And so when we use the word resplendent to describe your nervous system, in contrast to what I just described, which is the danger aspect and the protective aspect of limitation when it comes to our thoughts and behavior influenced by our body chemistry, when you know how to tend to and nurture and communicate with your nervous system properly and in a skilled way, the possibilities for using your body-mind connection for the purpose of creation is limitless. And so I want to share a story with you, which is that several years ago, I was teaching a retreat and I was listening to the musical laughter of the women downstairs who were acting like they had known each other their whole lives when they had known each other 48 hours. When they arrived at their retreat, they were timid, closed off, day of travel, cranky, uncertain about one another. After 48 hours of movement, nourishing food, time off of electronics, making art, depth-filled conversation, they were rolling around like puppies in the same litter, loving each other, cuddling together, like they just couldn't believe how in love they were with each other. And I wrote in my journal that night, when a woman's nervous system is well tended, she is naturally seduced by life. I'm going to say that one more time because I really want to imprint that into your system. When a woman's nervous system is well tended, she is naturally seduced by life. Case in point, you could take the same group of women, exact same 8 people, put them in line at CVS when there is a backup of prescriptions and have a much different experience, or at the grocery store, at the gas station, or whatever. You know, a great example of that from your own life might be thinking of your partner's quirky habits or traits and how those land in your system when you're on vacation and you're in nature and you're eating beautiful, delicious food, versus how those land in you when you have worked a full day and you didn't sleep the night before and you're starving and you get home and there's no food in the fridge. So your nervous system is thought of as the great communicator in the body. Its function is to relay messages between your body and your brain. So those could be messages of safety or danger, messages of hunger or thirst, messages of attachment, messages of love, connection. And what that means is that because sensation stimulates thought and thought stimulates behavior, every thought you have is a consequence of the state your nervous system is in at that time. And the mind is this wonderfully complex system that has a gift that is unique to human beings. And that gift is imagination. And so when you feel a sensation of fear, whatever fear feels like to you, the gift of your imagination can display all sorts of scenarios of what's going to go wrong, what could go wrong, what you're going to screw up, etc., etc. But when the nervous system is well tended and when the body-mind connection is skillfully navigated, that sensation of fear can actually send a signal that you're on exactly the right track because you're taking a risk, and risk leads to growth, and risk brings you closer to becoming the kind of woman that you want to be. Embodiment is a skill that can be learned by anyone, but in a culture that really relies on numbness in order to exist, and a system that also relies on numbness to keep certain types of people in power, embodiment and navigating sensation with skill is an undervalued type of education. But not to you, my dear listeners. If you are a listener of this podcast or you are first happening upon this podcast, most likely you are a person who has met the limitation of using numbness as a strategy to get through life. And you are looking for an experience of your aliveness that comes from more than simulated sensation of scrolling or shopping or sex or sugar. To feel and access that aliveness, you want something deeper and you want something more sustainable. And I'm going to give it to you right now, because what I want to share with you right now, as it pertains to your knowledge and skill around your nervous system, is a little something called the window of tolerance. And so I want you to imagine that we are looking at a 2-lane highway from an aerial view. So you've got the 2 yellow lines and then you've got a dotted line in the middle. And when we think about your nervous system is floating inside this window of tolerance. And so the upper line would represent activation. The lower line would represent rest. So let's say you move through your day, you need a little bit of exercise. Your nervous system's line is going to reach up towards that activation line as your system becomes a bit revved up from your workout. And then it's going to descend and go back towards that more restful state. You get in your car, you encounter a bit of traffic on your way to wherever you're going. Your system becomes activated, the traffic jam clears, your system comes back down to baseline and back down to rest. This is your window of tolerance. These are experiences that your body and your mind and your system feel very capable of meeting and tolerating. Flexion between these 2 states of rest and activation are very necessary for a healthy, regulated nervous system. What can happen is that when you encounter a situation that goes outside of your window of tolerance, is that a number of different events can occur. So let's say you're driving on your way to work, you're humming along at baseline, which is that dotted line at the middle, and you don't just happen upon an accident, but you almost get into an accident. You almost rear end someone. So that is a situation that you're not accustomed to tolerating. And so that line of your nervous system is going to go from baseline beyond that healthy activation up into an experience of fight or flight. And fight or flight is where you slam on the brakes to prevent rear-ending someone. Flight might be swerving so that you avoid hitting them. What can also happen is that in situations that extend beyond your window of tolerance, is that when fight or flight are not a reasonable coping strategy, in other words, you can't fight back or you can't run away, what the system will do for protection is will dip down below that healthy state of deactivation and rest into dissociation and what some will call the freeze response or a dorsal vagal response. It's a certain aspect of the nervous system that initiates freeze. So if you've ever been walking in the woods by yourself and you hear someone, your first response most likely is not going to be to scamper away or to hide. It's going to be to stop, to pause, to become undetectable so that you can have a little more time to evaluate. Now, an important thing to know is that these responses are taking place inside of you constantly in response to threats that are either real or perceived. So, for example, if you encounter a wild animal in the wilderness, this stress response is going to become initiated in order to keep you safe. If you read your boss's dissatisfaction with the same level of threat or a comparable level of threat to what you might perceive a wild animal to be a threat, your body does not know the difference. And so sitting there in your boss's office, if you perceive that disapproval to be incredibly threatening, that window of tolerance reaction is going to mean you either fight by defending yourself, you might flight by saying, screw this, I'm leaving this job, in your head or through your words, or you might freeze, in which case you lose your voice, you freeze up, you start to dissociate, you can't really focus on what this person is saying because your heart is pounding and you find it almost impossible to be in your own skin. What's also important to know is that these experiences create maps inside your nervous system and inside your mind to help you avoid danger in the future. So let's say you were bullied really badly as a child and you encounter a bully as an adult. That pathway of your body's reaction to that threat is already established and is already well worn. And so even though you're an adult and you feel like you should have some ability to stand up for yourself, there is a systematic process that takes over that is bigger than your cognition's ability to decide how you want to respond. These pathways, while often well established, are not permanent. And there is always the option to retrain and rewire yourself for a different experience. Several years ago, about 8 or 9 years ago, I had a series of somewhat traumatic events, like the sudden ending of an 11-year relationship, the death of a parent, a few other relationships that ended, and really just kind of my life imploded over a period of about 18 months. And, they always say, the first year after a divorce is the hardest. So I wrote out the first year. And then it was 2 years, and then it was 3 years, and then it was 4 years, and then it was 5 years. And there was something really, really wrong. I had zero resilience. The littlest thing could send me into feelings of hopelessness, despair. I had lost my mojo, and I was literally just clinging on for dear life. And I felt so frustrated and so alone because these were not, I hadn't been in a war zone. I had gone through initiations that everyone must go through, like the ending of a relationship or the death of a parent. These are human experiences. And that was really what spurred my journey into embodiment-based healing, because my body's response and reaction was disproportionate to what my mind could tell was actually going on. And when I started treating myself not as a depressed or anxious person, but as a person who was repairing a network of trauma, an architecture of the nervous system that was faulty to begin with, that was really when everything changed in not just my ability to function in the world, but my ability to actually be creative and show up for my life and feel a sense of belonging in the world again. And so that brings me to the next piece of resplendent information that I want to share with you, which is knowing your nervous system's accelerators and brakes. So in the book, Come As You Are, Emily Nagoski talks about in each person's system of arousal and sexuality, we all have a unique system of accelerators and brakes. And similarly, with your nervous system, we all have accelerators that help our nervous system thrive and help that window of tolerance to expand in a healthy, incremental way and a feeling of resilience and belonging to grow. And we all have brakes, which are things that grate on our nervous system and that separate us from that feeling of belonging. And this is where the resplendent feminine nervous system comes into play. When I say the word feminine, what I'm talking about is that flowing, creative, dynamic, sensational energy that lives within all of us. One of my teachers, Jenna Ward, describes it as the feeling, flowing aspect that exists in every human being. And when I started learning about nervous system recovery and attunement, I received lots of prompts to do things like meditate and go to bed on time and avoid stress and things like that, which just didn't really meet me where I needed to be met, because my nervous system, being highly identified with the energy that we call the feminine, in order for me to relax and to feel connected to life, I need to be surrounded by beauty and music and art and fun and delight. And so I started creating my own menu of what helped my mental health, my physical state, the sensation and awareness in my body, what helped that thrive, so my accelerators, and what really deteriorated that connection, so my breaks. So some simple examples would be, I know my breaks are scrolling on my phone, being in isolation, living alone and working from home. I can go days without seeing people and then I start to go insane. Sugar, which throws off my blood sugar, and so as someone who has PCOS and is insulin resistant, that is like a recipe for depression for me. And so what I'd really encourage you to do is to start tracking and maybe even keeping a diary of what are your accelerators and your brakes. What are the things that help you get back to a feeling of baseline when you've gone outside that window of tolerance? What are the things that you know erode your ability to be present and to show up in your life and to feel present in your body? And knowing that there is no judgment around those things, and it's not about finding out what's good or what's bad, but it's simply about being curious about how to be the best steward to this system that you have been given in this lifetime, which is unique and which needs a precise recipe that only really you can discover. And in next week's episode, what I'm going to be sharing are some more specific tools and techniques that you can use to help to furnish that segment of your accelerators section, things that really help promote and support nervous system health, which then has such a significant impact on your mental health and capabilities. So if what I've shared with you today strikes any sort of chord, and you know somewhere in your system that mending this body-mind connection is an integral part of moving you forward on your path, head over to schoolofsensualliving.com/coaching. This is the only time I will be offering this depth of a program at a reduced rate. So if you've ever wanted to explore coaching with me, this is the time. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week on our next installment of this series. For coaching, classes, and community in sensual living, head over to schoolofsensualliving.com. There you'll find a free video workshop in how to overcome anxiety and feel confident in almost any situation through the skill and power of your body language. Go to schoolofsensualliving.com/confidence to start your journey today.